Okay. So I wanted to thank everyone for having me here. Today I am going to share my story. The theme for this morning is countercultural for the common good. So the topic of my talk is investing counterculturally for the common good. I'm going to share my story and share why we started Eventide. So my story starts in 2007, and I was working at a large university in their audit department. This right here is an exchange between my direct supervisor and me. She said, "Please clarify, the petty cash listing that Phyllis provided was current as of so-and-so date." Correct. And I said, yes, according to Phyllis. Also, if you notice, there are accounts on that list that were set up recently. She said, "I am going to ignore your second comment because I find it sarcastic." I lasted at that job for 6 weeks, and I was fired. I was fired about a week after this. I was humiliated, and I was living at home with my parents. Didn't want to tell them that I just got fired. So in the mornings, I would put on my dress clothes and I would leave the house and act like I'm still at work. And in the evenings, this right here is the washing machine and dryer of my parents' basement in Medford, Massachusetts. I would just kneel where no one could see me and just pray late nights. And my prayer to God was to use me, to show me His will, because I felt as though within my work I had no purpose. And at the time, my thinking was that God needs to call me into church ministry. Because to me, if God was to call me into anything, it would be either be church ministry or into the mission field. So I was praying for a calling, for a clear direction into one of those two areas. So I had a little cousin living in the house with me, and one day he came to me and said, "Robin, what's going on?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Where's your laptop? You haven't been coming home with your laptop for a few weeks." And so then at that point, I ended up confessing to my whole family that I've been fired from my job and don't have a job. So I asked a few of my friends to pray with me. One of those friends is Finney Kuruvilla. Another one was my brother. We had started a house church together years prior to this. So we would pray together, and I asked them to pray with me in seeking God's will for my life. Through the prayer, there were various ideas that would come up. So Finney had this one idea to start a men's retreat center, and that idea seemed good to me. It seemed like a pretty spiritual idea. Another idea that Finney had was, it's called seitan, okay, and it's a wheat extract. And Finney said it tastes just like hamburger. You can make hamburgers without using meat. I wasn't super thrilled with the idea. First of all, I didn't even believe you could make a hamburger without using meat and make it taste like meat. But secondly, I wasn't really thrilled about the idea of spending a lot of time in prayer and then starting a product that sounds like Satan. And so I just said, you know what, I'm not sure that's the right idea for us. Ironically, this was in 2007. In 2009, a company called Beyond Meat started. Now they have the famous Impossible Burger. I heard that they are now worth $10 billion. And I'm hoping that Finney's not paying attention to that. So then I approached Finney because prior to this, for a couple of years prior to this, I've overheard Finney talking to my dad about his investing, how he doesn't put money in pornography and abortion and things that would be displeasing to God. So I said to Finney, "Do you think maybe other Christians would want to invest in this way? Maybe we could start something where we could honor God through our investing." And just to give you an example of the problem, this right here is a picture of a little boy in one of the Asian countries smoking. In the last 100 years, 100 million people have died from tobacco use. In the next 100 years, it's estimated that 1 billion people will die from tobacco use. According to the former FDA commissioner, half of all long-term tobacco users will die because of tobacco. This problem is especially an issue in the developing world. If you look at countries like Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, 65% of boys ages 13 to 15 are addicted to cigarettes, and 40% of girls ages 13 to 15 are addicted to cigarettes. The average age that children start smoking in a place like Indonesia is age 9. Some children are smoking at the age of 3. Sounds terrible. What's even more terrible is that many of us are profiting from this. Large tobacco companies are in our 401k plans, in our IRAs, in our investment accounts. We do this unknowingly. We trust our money with a portfolio manager, and the portfolio manager is supposed to steward our assets, but yet they are putting our dollars into companies like this. The largest college savings education fund in America, the last time I checked, their top holding was Philip Morris International. In other words, American parents are saving for their children's college education through profits that are coming from the exploitation of the poorest children in the world. Recently, I looked at the 10 largest mutual funds and ETFs in America. Every one of them had tobacco in it as one of their top holdings. I want to read to you some verses from the Bible that convicted us in 2007 as we were praying together. It comes from Proverbs chapter 1, verses 10 to 19. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let's ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave and whole like the pit, like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things. We will get lots of profit. We will get all sorts of dividends and fill our houses with plunder and fill our IRAs with plunder, our 401k plans with plunder, our bank accounts with plunder. Cast lots with us. Invest with us. We will all share the purse. A mutual fund is a purse that many people are sharing in together. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush to evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird could see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of those who get it. So at this point, Finney and I are thinking we have a really good biblical framework for investing. We're going to avoid ill-gotten gain. And we are still involved in this house church together. Throughout Eventide's history, I've seen God moving and leading and guiding us. Some points it was very obvious. One of those times was right here. This man named Tim Weinhold shows up to our house church. Tim was one of the people that I would say has thought deeply about purpose of business from a biblical perspective. One of the people in the whole country that I would say has thought very deeply about the purpose of business. So he shows up at the house church. If you ask Tim today, he had never been to a house church in his life. He decides to Google house church in Cambridge and shows up at our house church. And Finney and I are talking about starting a Christian mutual fund. And Tim comes to us, and Tim says, I know what it means to be a Christian. I know what a mutual fund is. Put that together for me. And so Finney and I said, we're going to avoid ill-gotten gain. Tim said, that sounds like a good idea, good thing to do, but it doesn't seem very inspiring. And I said, why not? And Tim said, if you are investing in business, if you are partnering with business, have you considered what God's intent for business is? Rather than just avoiding the ill-gotten gain, should you not be seeking to embrace the companies that are doing well, what God's intent is for business? So I'm going to come back to the purpose of business in a second. First, for the entrepreneurs in the room, I wanted to give you some encouragement. I know sometimes when you're starting a business, you are struggling, you don't really know what to do. On a day-by-day basis, you're trying to figure things out. I've been there, and in some ways I'm still there. But I wanted to read some emails between Finney and me as we were starting Eventide. So this email is from February 29, 2008. Our plan is to launch the mutual fund in July 1, 2008, so we have 4 months. That means that we have to file the prospectus with the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, 3 months prior to that. So we have 1 month to do that process. So Finney writes to me, this morning I ordered 2 more books from Amazon.com. One is on how to create and run a mutual fund, a book that was just released. We are going to have to scour that book very carefully. They both look very, very relevant. So in order to have a launch date of July 1, 4 months from tomorrow, we're going to have to make an aggressive push. In particular, the SEC prospectus is going to be a tight deadline. And then he goes on to say, my estimation is that we're going to have a lot of reading in the next 4 months. I should be able to read for at least 1 hour a day. Robin, if you could read for 3 hours a day, then between the two of us, we will know all that we need to know to pull this off. This should be fun. So Finney was actually probably being pretty humble. He probably gets more done in 1 hour than I do in 3 hours. So I put my life savings into getting Eventide started. And I got married in 2008 as well, so I'm preparing for my marriage. For the financial advisors in the room, I know you're going to probably come and talk to me. I put my entire wedding on a credit card. My wife was stressed out, but I was thrilled, personally. But I needed an income as we were getting Eventide started. And since I was living in my parents' home at the time, I didn't need a lot of income. So I emailed Finney. I have looked into sleep studies and have responded to ads that I found on Craigslist. I am looking for part-time jobs also within the airlines industry. Having even a low-paying job with an airlines may be a good idea for me if I could do it on a part-time basis. Because after we launched our mutual fund, I will be having to travel on a weekly basis, so I could travel for free, and maybe even travel to India multiple times for free. And for those of you that read ahead, the fasting, meeting, and dinner on the same sentence, we were fasting for breakfast and lunch, and then praying, and then having dinner late night. So for me, building Eventide was very exciting. I was really passionate now. I saw clearly God's intent. I saw clearly that God was leading me now. But where I struggled was when I talked to other Christian business people, especially people that I would have considered to be mentors, people that I wanted to look up to and get feedback and advice from. One person said to me, "You're not going to succeed. Business is business. You have to be able to separate business from your faith." Romans chapter 12, verse 2 is the theme for this morning is countercultural for the common good. The verse that first came to my mind when I thought about that was Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that you may test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. I was praying for God's will at the end of 2007. I needed a renewal of my mind, and I needed to stop conforming to the world. So now I have a renewed understanding of investing. Investing is ownership. It is partnership in business. Investors provide the capital that business needs in order to further their mission. Investors participate in the ill-gotten and the well-gotten profits of a business and root for the success of the business. So what is the problem today? The problem is that investing has been divorced of its true purpose, which is to provide capital to good businesses. we often talk about profiting from the market rather than profiting from businesses. We talk about Sharpe ratios, standard deviations, outperforming benchmarks, but we forget the fact that we're investing in real businesses. This is a famous investor, Cliff Asness. He said, "I pride myself in not knowing what's in my portfolios." I would say generally the issue that Christians face could be summed up as either the mafia wife problem or the Godfather problem. The mafia wife is a person that knows that her husband is doing things that he probably shouldn't be doing. And she's enjoying the good life, but she doesn't ask too many questions, because if she starts asking the questions, her conscience will be pricked. I haven't seen the Godfather movies. I've seen like 5 or 10 minutes of them. So I'm assuming who the Godfather is. That the Godfather is probably a person that hurts certain types of people, but it's probably generous towards other types of people. And that's really what we do as Christians at times, right? We focus so much on generosity, but we neglect where the profits are coming from. Deuteronomy 23:18 says, "Not to bring the earnings of a male or of a female prostitute into the temple to pay any vow, for this is an abomination to the Lord your God." John Wesley preached a famous sermon called The Use of Money. John Wesley said, "Make all you can to give all you can, but make all you can without hurting yourself or your neighbor in body or in soul." This principle is there throughout the Bible. When Judas brings the blood money into the temple, the high priest don't take it. So what is my renewed understanding of business today? One is that business is intended to meet the physical and material needs of humanity. We've already heard this multiple times today, but in Genesis chapter 2, verse 5, we read that there was not yet crops on the earth, partly because there was no humans to cultivate the ground. Right? God partners with us. We are able to partner with God's great intent of providing for the world through business, through products and services. Second purpose of business is to allow individuals to express aspects of their identity through creative and meaningful work. We know that God is a creating God. We already heard this today. When God creates something, He calls it good. But then God creates us in His image. We are supposed to create things that are good, products and services that are good and beneficial for humanity, for the global common good, for human flourishing. And 3, to create wealth for all stakeholders. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 19 says, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gave you the power to create wealth." Oftentimes we forget about wealth creation for all stakeholders when we think about business. So what does investing counterculturally mean for me and for us at Eventide? It means really to avoid the ill-gotten gains. That includes things like predatory lending, abortion, abortifacients, adult entertainment, pornography, embryonic stem cell research, lifestyle promotion, alcohol, tobacco, gambling, and weaponry. What does it mean for us to invest for the common good? In Leviticus chapter 19, there's a passage that talks about loving your neighbor as yourself, but it speaks to business people. It says if you are a farmer, here's how you must treat the hired servant. If you are a vineyard owner, here's how you must treat the poor in the community. It goes on to say, love your neighbor as yourself. So at Eventide, we sat down and we analyzed what are all the neighbors to a business? Who should the business be seeking to serve? And the list that we came up with is customers, employees, supply chain, host communities, environment, and society. And the easy way to remember this, CES, customers, employees, supply chain, communities, environment, and society. So Eventide's purpose statement, Eventide strives to honor God and serve its clients by investing in companies that create compelling value for the global common good. Partner with us. For the pastors in the audience, you could be teaching that profits can be well-gotten or ill-gotten. Oftentimes what I find is that we have stewardship classes in our churches. I think those are great. I don't want to be negative towards that at all. But the emphasis usually is on generosity, contentment, debt management. But the source of profit is hardly taught. Entrepreneurs and business people build the kinds of companies that we would all be excited to invest in as Christians. For everybody else, consider your 401k plans, your IRAs, your investment accounts, whether they are honoring to God. I want to wrap up by reading one last email between Finney and me. So this was in 2013. I write to Finney. Finney, we are very thankful for the ability and insight God has blessed you with. I remember in 2008, people would ask me why we would allow a doctor to be a portfolio manager. One person said to give the fund to so-and-so other person and keep you as an analyst. Whether the performance continues into the future or not, what we have seen so far has been a miracle. It has been God's faithfulness to you, to your dad, and to all of us. I still feel the same way, that God's faithfulness has been shown to us. We named the company Eventide. It means evening in the King James Bible. There's an old English hymn, Fast Falls the Eventide. And there is a hymn that says, work for the night is coming. Eventide was a reminder to us that there is good work to be done because the night is coming. And Gilead means mountain of witness. The name of our first fund was Eventide Gilead Fund. Gilead means mountain of witness, hill of testimony. And we want it to be a mountain of witness to Wall Street and to the entire marketplace, and that is still our prayer today. Thank you.